All right, today we're going to be talking about geometric sequences. So these are the sequences that are multiplying or dividing by the same number each time. So these are what we call the geometric sequences. So again, what we're doing on this worksheet is we are finding the explicit, the recursive, and then, so that we're writing the explicit formula, the recursive formula, and then we are finding the eighth term. So we're just doing the eighth term because these can get rather big, or rather small in a hurry. Okay. So again, when we talk about the explicit and geometric sequences with geometric sequences, they have a little bit different formula than the arithmetic. So the explicit formula for geometric is you take a sub n is equal to the first term times your common ratio, which is the number you're multiplying or dividing by, and then raise it to the n minus 1 power. Okay? And then the recursive formula is essentially the same, except for instead of adding a common difference, you are multiplying your common ratio, or the number you're multiplying or dividing by. Okay? So when we look at these, there is a quick trick to figuring out what's happening each time. Just like with the arithmetic, where you can take the second term and minus the first to figure out the common difference. You can do the same thing with this type of problem, but instead of subtracting, you're going to divide them. So for example, on number 9, since this is going to be one that a lot of you would struggle figuring out the common ratio, you can take the second term in your sequence and divide it by your first term. So you could take 4 divided by 12, and it will give you your common ratio. Now, if it's less than 1, a decimal here, that means it's going to be dividing, and we set up dividing in a very specific way, and we generally want it as a fraction. Now, some of you might recognize this is dividing by 3, but if you get a decimal you're not familiar with, and
just to let you know, the wireless is up and running.
The wireless is up and running. Okay, so if you get a decimal you're not familiar with, on my calculators, there's just a quick button press that'll convert any decimal to a fraction. It's this button right here above enter. You just click that, and it'll convert it to a fraction, which is 1 over 3. You need to have all of these dividing numbers set up as a fraction in this formula, because the formula is set up for multiplying, and so you've got to, if you're dividing, you got to set up the fraction, which is the same thing as multiplying by that fraction, would be the same thing as dividing by 3. Okay, so basically if you're dividing by any number, it's just going to end up being 1 over whatever number you're divided by is what you're going to plug into your formula. So if you're dividing by 4, it would be 1 over 4. If you're dividing by 10, it would be 1 over 10. Whatever you're dividing by is what goes in your formula. It would go on the bottom of that fraction. Okay, so again, the formula for explicit is a sub n is equal to my first term, which is 12, times my common ratio, which was 1 over 3. So 1 over 3. And then that's going to be raised to the n minus 1 power. Okay, so there's my explicit formula. Recursive, again, is pretty much the same. A sub n is equal to a sub n minus 1. But this time we are multiplying the a sub n minus 1 with my common ratio, which is 1 over 3. So these two numbers are multiplying with each other. Okay, then we still identify the first term, which is 12. And then it wants me to find the eighth term. So just like with arithmetic, once we have our explicit formula, to find a specific term, we would replace the n's with whatever term we're looking for. So we're going to replace the n's with 8. So it would be like a sub 8 is equal to 12 times 1 over 3 to the 8 minus 1 power. 8 minus 1 is 7, so it would be like 12 times 1 over 3 to the 7th power. Now, we run into an order operations issue here. So what are we going to do first? We're going to multiply, or we're going to do the exponent. We order operations, PEMDAS, exponents come before multiplying, right? So we're going to take 1 over 3 and raise it to the 7th power first. So again, your calculator does this for you. So 1 fraction 3, and then exponent 7. We get this nice, fun decimal here. And then we multiply that by 12. That gives me that fun decimal, which I can then convert to an actual fraction, which would be 4 over 729. So the eighth term is 4 over 729. Okay, let's look at one that's multiplying. So let's look at this one right here. So we've got 5, 10, 20, 40. What's happening each time? Again, I can always take the second number divided by the first to get my common ratio. So 10 divided by 5 is going to give me 2. So that's the number I'm multiplying each time. So I'm multiplying by 2 each time. So my common ratio is going to be 2. So let's set up my explicit. So a sub n is equal to my first term, which is 5, times 2 to the n minus 1 power. Recursive again, pretty much the same. A sub n is equal to a sub n minus 1. And then multiplying with 2. And then the first term is going to be 5. Again, to find the eighth term, I'd replace the n with 8. So it'd be like a sub 8 is equal to 5 times 2 to the 8 minus 1 power, which again I already know is 7. So again, PEMDAS, you do the exponent first, so 2 to the 7th power, and then times it by 5, and that'll give me my eighth term, which is 640. So 640. Okay? And then just to review these before, just so you guys have them for the test. Here just wants the next 4 terms, and it'll give you the first term in either the common difference or ratio. So the key here is just understanding what D means and what the ratio means. D means you're adding the number or subtracting it if it's a negative. And R means you are multiplying by that number. Okay? So here, D, it's a negative 2. That means you're subtracting 2 each time. It wants to write the first 4 terms. And a sub 1 is the name of the first term. So that means the first term is 5. Then if I subtract 2, the next term would be 3. If I subtract 2, the next term would be 1. Subtract 2 again, the next term would be negative 1. That's all I want you to do. Okay? This one gives me the first term is 1 over 4, and then a common ratio of 2. Okay, so if I times this by 2, it would become 2 over 4, or 1/2. Times it by 2 again, it's going to be 1. Times it by 2 again, it's going to be 2. And that's all you got to do.